Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Among the Stars from Artipia Games was one of my big surprises of last year. I was actually sad that it took me so long to discover the game. I had to wait until it was actually being, I didn't have to, but I procrastinated, didn't try playing the game until Stronghold Games started releasing it in North America. And when I finally played it, it was great. It was everything I wanted Seven Wonders to be, a deeply thematic card drafting game where you're building a space station with beautiful artwork in this cool universe. I like the other game that takes place in this universe so far, New Dawn, as well. So I'm always excited when they have expansions for Among the Stars, and I already reviewed the Ambassadors expansion as well. And the Ambassadors expansion is really solid, and now we have Expanding the Alliance. But the thing is, this was originally called, if I'm not mistaken, the promo. So it was Among the Stars, the promos, which should tell you what is in the box. That was that, and this, which is just a renamed version of that, is a collection of all of the different promo materials that had come out for Among the Stars from the various Kickstarters and the Indiegogo campaign that they had, and also conventions and some special one-shots. All the different promos put together into one box. And as such, this is a bit of a hodgepodge of different things. It doesn't have one singular theme the way that the Ambassadors did. But nevertheless, there's some really cool things to be had here. Some things not as cool, but still solid. So I guess I'm spoiling this here, but let's go ahead and take a brief overview of the stuff that comes in this set. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, I'm just going to give you a brief run through of the stuff that comes in the Expanding the Alliance expansion for Among the Stars. As I mentioned in the intro, this is a collection of promo stuff that was released through, I guess, the Kickstarter campaigns for the various different parts of the game, and also at conventions, things like that. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of different things. There's not one overarching theme that connects them all together. Some things are better than others. I'll get to that in my final thoughts, but let's just go through some of the new stuff. So first off, you get a bunch of basic components to flesh out the game, including components for a 5th and 6th player. The orange and purple, they come with their own reactors, you got more energy cubes, you have more of the bureau cards that you use only if you are using the Ambassadors expansion. So you have all that stuff, not really worth explaining there. There's 3 new alien races that come with the game. You have the Nixtos, not named after me, unfortunately. At the beginning of the game, you get a bunch of these little Nixtos tokens that you will use for this special ability. Let's see, there we go. Once for each other player before selected cards are revealed, you may give that player a token. He must discard the card he selected without getting any kind of credits for it. Then you have Debos. Debos is, at the end of each year, you may take up to one of your locations and place it somewhere else in your station. Building restrictions still apply. And then you have the Ludons. At the beginning, we're going to try and get this in focus a bit more. There we go. Here we go. That's better. For the Ludons, at the beginning of every year, draw 2 Ludon tokens and keep one, shuffle the other back into the rest of the tokens. During this year, whenever you build a location that has the same type as the token you kept, you pay 1 credit less. At the end of the year, discard this token. All right, and then we have new ambassadors that are going to be used for the game. These are all the actual Ludon race that I was just describing. So you have the same ambassador rules apply, and you have to have the rest of the ambassador expansion to use it. But I don't even know how to say this name, Dael Ba. For 1 credit, all blue locations, the administrative locations you build cost 1 credit less. You have, let's focus in even more there. You have Nahar Esta. You pay 3 credits, or you gain 3 credits. Next turn, players choose a card from the same hand of cards they chose this turn. Then we have Emil Kara. You build this is one of the ambassadors that just counts against you, but I think gets this card right away. You build a power reactor with an energy cube on it. Next turn, players choose a card from the same hand of cards that they chose this turn, so you see a common theme with these. And then finally, you have Obetus Neck. Choose a location type and put it on, choose a location type token and put it on another player's face tile. Whenever that player, brace tile, whenever that player builds a location of that type, you gain a victory point. And by the way, these are the tiles that you use for that special ability. They have the Ludon picture on that side and these. And I think there are other tokens that you can use from the other expansion sets. And then you have the reviewers. These were cards as part of the one of the Kickstarter campaigns that paid homage to some of the reviewers, the board game reviewers who loved Among the Stars. I am not amongst them. This was well before my time. But we have Tox, which is reveal the top 3 unused special locations. If there are 3 different location types, it's a miss. 2 different location types, it's a hit and you gain 3 victory points. If there's one location type, it's a crit and you gain 5 victory points. By the way, most of these, I'll talk about this in my final thoughts, these are kind of gimmicky cards. You get some points from them, but they're really supposed to be for fun. So you have Undead Viking, which is +1 victory point if you have facial hair, +1 if you have the most facial hair, +1 if you can trace your family tree back to Denmark, and +1 if you are undead. Rado, you get a victory point every time someone passes behind you. And then Tom Vassal himself, which is +1 victory point for every 50 board games in your collection. That's pretty unfair if people play with me and I have that card. There are new achievements that the players can vie for. I'll just go through all these because they're pretty interesting. No delays. 5 victory points if you build the most locations with immediate abilities. You have multi-purpose. 4 victory points if you're the first one to build 2 locations of each type. Reach for the stars. 4 victory points if you build the location with the greatest distance from your main reactor. Energy efficient. 4 victory points if you build the least power reactors. Fully operational, 7 victory points if you build at least 12 different basic locations. And something for everyone, 6 victory points if you build at least 8 different special locations. Okay, expanding the Alliance comes with a special mini expansion called the Inspection Cards. This is where there's going to be the Alliance sends an inspection ship in order to check out your station and see that it meets different requirements. There's actually 6 of these cards, but they all follow the same basic format. At the beginning of the game, you're going to shuffle them up, deal 1 out to each player, and you'll do this for every year of the game. At the end of the year, you flip the card over after keeping it secret, and if you meet the inspection requirements, you either gain points. If you don't meet them, you lose points. So for instance, actually we'll show you this one first. This one says that you are going to gain +3 victory points if you have the most blue administrative locations at the end of the year, or -2 if you have the least. And there's 1 of those for every type of location. Then there's also this one, which is just if you have the most delayed locations at the end of the year, you get the +3 victory points. And if you have the least delayed location at the end of the year, you get -2. So that's how those work. The game also comes with 2 new sets of conflict cards. Now, conflict cards, if you remember from the base set, they're purely optional. If you decide to play with them, you choose 1 set of conflict cards to use and not the other ones, and they don't come into play until the 2nd year. Now, the infestation cards, these are all the same. They all function the same way. At the beginning of the 2nd year, you're going to mix these in, but you're also going to put 1 of these infestation tokens on every player's main reactor. And the reason why those are bad is that infestation tokens, so long as they're on one of your locations, you cannot build adjacent to it. It doesn't really matter for the main reactor, probably, by the beginning of the 2nd year, but it will matter for other locations. So when you play one of these infestation cards, you get to take an infestation token from your station and put it onto another player's station on one of their location cards. Also, infestation tokens are -3 victory points at the end of the game. Now you also have relocation conflict cards, which just like it sounds, they're going to let you move locations from one station to another. There's 1 of these cards for every type of location. So this one says you choose a green location in another player's station and you build it in yours, paying the cost, but that player can pay 2 credits to you to prevent you from doing so. This one says that you just get to choose any location. So there are those types of cards as well. Then, of course, there are a bunch of new special locations of every particular type. So let's look at the purple ones, the recreational first. Now, these are sector gateways. In there are sector gateways for every one of the colors, and they're pretty interesting. So they all function basically the same. +2, it's 2 victory points, and then delayed ability. You get +3 victory points if recreational sector gateway is part of a 2x2 grid of purple locations. You have the casino. You build it, roll a die. Depending on what you roll, you get more victory points. And you have the zero gravity area, +2 victory points, or I'm sorry, +3 if there is no empty space within 2 of this card. Then you have some blue cards. You have the waste processing facility. +2 for each blue location in the discard pile, or is that +3? It's really hard to read these numbers. +1, actually. Then you have the administrative sector gateways. Same thing as a purple one, but for blue. You have to have a 2x2 grid of blue locations. Section seal. Section seal divides your station in 2 distinct parts. You gain a victory point for each location in the smaller part. Then you have the yellow cards. You have Galactic Expo. 3 victory points. You get 3 credits. Each other player gets 1. Actually, that might be... No, it is 3. Okay, these are really hard to read. Business Sector Gateway. 2 victory points, +3 if Business Sector Gateway is part of a 2x2 grid of yellow locations. Starting to see a pattern here. You have the Defense Grid. +1 victory point for each red location. And then you have their version of the Sector Gateway, which is for red locations. Finally, we'll take a look at the green ones. Intergalactic or Diplomatic Sector Gateway, 2x2 grid of green locations. The Ambassadorial Shuttle lets you must be placed in another player's station. No other locations may be built adjacent to the Ambassadorial Shuttle. And the Xenobiology Lab, +2 victory points if it is located adjacent to a medical facility. And the very last thing we'll look at are these new, essentially dual lands. There are locations that count as 2 different colors, and their abilities usually have something to do with those 2 different types of colors. So you have the hotel, which counts as a yellow and a purple. You get +2 victory points, or +1 victory point for each adjacent yellow or purple location. The Galactic Court, which is the same thing but for green and blue. Then you have the logistics facility. You gain victory points equal to the yellow and the blue locations in your station, whichever is the lowest. And again, these are all sort of analogs of each other. So there's the ship repair facility, the Galactic Trade Center, the mess hall, the Alliance Strategic Command, the holding cells, and the Alien Museum. All right, so that was a hopefully quick run through of the new stuff that comes in Expanding the Alliance. Kind of a hodgepodge of different promos. Some definitely really, really cool. Some not so much, but overall pretty solid. Let's talk more about it in my final thoughts. Well, like I said, there's a lot of different things going on in this expansion. Lots of little bits and all different special abilities and flavor and theme. A lot to keep track of. In fact, I'm giving myself a little cheat sheet to keep track of the things that I want to talk about in this final thoughts. But overall, this is a very solid set. I don't like it as much as the Ambassadors, but that's only because the Ambassadors introduced one unified element that drastically changed the game, which in my opinion was in a very cool way. And while there was other things that were added with that set, like special locations that weren't really anything to do with the Ambassadors, still that's what that set was based on and focused on. Expanding the Alliance / the promos does not have that kind of focus because it's just a bunch of little things mixed in together into one box, which doesn't make it bad, but I would say that if you're new to Among the Stars, you've played the base game, maybe you own it and you like it a lot, and you're looking for the next expansion to get, go with the Ambassadors first. That's my big recommendation there, because I just think that it's a better fit for your first expansion. Then if you still really love the game, move on to Expanding the Alliance. But just to go through some of the things that comes in the game, it comes with a 5th and 6th player. I don't recommend that. I think this is a solid game up to 4 players. When you get to 5 or 6 players, even though you're taking simultaneous actions and it shouldn't add too much time to the game, remember that you're always checking each other's stations. There's a lot of different other effects going on now, especially if you're adding in the Ambassadors expansion. So I don't know that I could recommend going to 5 and 6 with this. I really don't. I would stick with the up 3 or 4 being ideal. And there's a new set on Kickstarter right now that'll be perfect for 2 apparently. But 3 or 4 right now as of this point is the perfect number of players for Among the Stars. I wouldn't go higher than that, but hey, at least you've got purple and orange pieces at this point. New achievements are really cool because there's a wide variety of them that cover a lot of different things, and you can shuffle those right in. It's probably the easiest thing to mix right into the game, because one of the complaints about Among the Stars is that it's hard to keep all the components and keep track of them and mix them all together and then separate them. Achievements, put them all together. There's only like 1 Ambassador achievement, I think, that from the previous set, I think I recall that you might just have to take out or ignore. But other than that, mix them all together, they're great. Then you have the best thing about this set, the dual lands. I love calling them that too. It's just so cool to have them and to have them be versatile, and you know, they may have no use for you, however, but having them count as 2 different locations usually is going to be very, very useful. And I like the fact that there's two different types of them that give you different points. Like one where you get victory points equal to those two colors that are in your station, whatever is lowest, or just being able to get more extra points for the adjacent locations of those two colors. They're simple. It doesn't seem like they'd be that big a deal in the game, but they are, and I like them a lot. It's probably my favorite thing from the set. The inspection cards, I wouldn't necessarily bother with those, and they're really easy to not play with. You wouldn't even notice, because even though they're neat and they work fine, it's just another little fiddly bit that you have to keep track of. And if you are using things like ambassadors, then I don't know. I wouldn't bother with it personally. If you're using ambassadors and conflict sets, it's just another thing to keep track of. It kind of slows the game down a bit. It's a neat idea. They look cool. All the artwork in this expansion is cool as well, but it's not the greatest thing. Then you have new buildings for all the different special locations for all the different types. The sector gateways are a lot of fun too. Maybe that's my second favorite thing in this expansion. It's just neat to be working towards that. I like it when the game gives you a direction to go in. You can still do whatever you want, but as you play the game, you start to focus on more things in order to get more victory points. And I like the sector gateway concept a lot. The two conflicts cards, Infestation, I've played with them both. Infestation is kind of, again, fiddly, not really like, oh, here, take this token, blah, blah, blah. Now, the relocation one is even more fiddly because you're actually taking a location and building it on your station, but I didn't think that it was that big a deal. I mean, it is a big deal, but it felt cooler and it felt more interactive and like you were having much more of an effect. I mean, yeah, putting an infestation token on someone's station is interactive, but it didn't feel as nice as taking someone's location and putting it in your base. So I think that's the cooler one of the two. And they're definitely both more interesting than the original conflict set, but I have had mixed reactions with any of the conflict sets. Some people like them, some people think that they're too screw you, and I get that. That's why they're called conflict sets. But if you were going to play with one of the three, I think relocation is the way to go if you don't mind actually having to move stuff around. Then you have the new alien races, which are all pretty cool, but they're like the Nixtos, which is they have their own tokens and they can force you to not build the card that you selected. That's okay. And the Ludons, who also come with their own ambassadors as well. And those are all fine. Nothing really earth-shattering there. I will say that the Reviewers cards, and this is not out of like professional jealousy or anything, they're just not useful. I mean, they're just supposed to be a joke. They're just supposed to be for fun. I wouldn't play with them, especially since the Tom Vassal card gives me a huge advantage over anyone that I'm playing with, because I think I'm the only person that actually buys board games at this point. Everyone knows that I do, so they just play all my games. So I would get a lot of points from that card, but they're just for fun, but they're okay. I wouldn't necessarily ever use them. So all in all, like I said, great expansion. Not as good as the ambassadors, but that's because it's just a mix of a bunch of different cards. And for what that is, adding more variety to the set and giving you more modular options, it really can't be beat, because Among the Stars is a fantastic game. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.